Hello. Thank you for tuning into this very special episode. My name is Nick Tria, freshman at the University of Connecticut, currently taking ANP 1006. And I would like to welcome a very special guest for today's episode, who, as soon as I learned we were covering an anthropological topic, I knew I had to bring on to the show. Mr. Maxwell Sayler, freshman at Wheaton College in Massachusetts, currently studying anthropology with hopes to be a cultural anthropologist, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Thanks for having me on, Nick.
Yeah, no problem. And today we're going to be discussing the topic of animal domestication, a topic I feel outside of the anthropological world, people are unfamiliar with. Many people are unaware of the process of the domestication of certain crucial animals that are a part of our lives, whether it's pets such as dogs or cats, or like crucial animals to our diet, such as like chickens, pigs, or cows.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a lot of consideration is put into the human aspect of anthropology and not so much the
Mhm.
relationship between humans and animals.
Right. So, what do we mean by domestication? Well, domestication in its simplest form is a relationship between human and animal, in which the human has control over the animal's actions. These actions include its movement, feeding, protection, socialization, and most importantly, its breeding. The purpose behind controlling an animal's action varies based on the animal, but most of the time it's done either for reasons like food, secondary products, labor, and companionship, like owning a pet. One of the most important factors in the definition of the domestication of animals within animals is that the human has control over the animal. Some anthropologists argue that the domestic relationship between humans and plants is mutualistic, where both the human and the plant reap benefits. The plants themselves make large evolutionary changes when in a domestic relationship with humans. However, the same argument is much harder to be made about animals. Sure, genetic changes are made to domestic animals, but the lives they live as domesticates are worse compared to humans. As most of the time they live in captivity and produce more of the output for humans rather than the humans producing output for the animals. That doesn't really happen. They also don't really have the same nutritional value as they would if they were in the wild. They don't have a choice of what they eat. Max, you want to add anything about some of the general facts about domestication of animals?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think there's a couple things that you forgot to note.
Mhm.
Domesticated animals belong to all types of animals. Okay, we're looking at mammals, we're looking at birds, fish, you know, other assorted groups.
Right.
It's also important to note that domestication is an ongoing process.
Hmm.
Uh, the sophisticated technology for breeding has allowed humans to bring more species under domesticated control. Um, and it's also worth considering that the agricultural revolution and the development of sedentary living is mainly responsible for the beginning of domestication. You know how humans, if they didn't live in one spot, they couldn't manage taking care of their own animals. Um, you know, if they're moving around a lot, they can't
Right. Right.
bring with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Some great points there. Thanks. One of the concepts I wanted to cover under the scope of domestication is the differing characteristics or the different phenotypes that are present in domesticated animals compared to wild animals, and how this kind of occurs. One of the main factors in the changing of phenotypes includes directed selection, in which the human targets certain traits in an animal that might be, desirable or favorable for the human, which ties back to the main premise of domestication. Humans target a certain characteristic and intensive breeding with animals that contain the trait to increase the frequency of the trait amongst the domesticated population. Max, can you give us another factor possibly that might cause the change in phenotype?
Yeah, sure. So the relaxation of natural selection also plays a role in
Mm,
animal domestication.
yeah,
As once humans take over the role of provisioning and protecting the animals, concept of natural selection sort of dies out.
right,
It's because the animals are they're not fighting for themselves anymore, right? They don't have to provide for themselves. They have support and aid towards their survival. So certain traits that typically appear in wild populations, um, don't appear in the domesticated populations.
That's very, very true. So in a sense, you could say that directed selection takes over for natural selection when animals
Yeah,
are
I
domesticated.
would
Yeah,
agree with that.
yeah. A very important phenotypic trait amongst domesticated animals is the animal's behavior. In most cases, the behavior of the animal is the initial and most important trait that the domesticate establishes. The main goal in most cases, especially in animals in which the goal is to obtain food or a secondary resource, is to ensure that the stress that the animal will face when it has a close encounter with a human is sort of low. The animal will be calm and receptive to a human, which is important. Obviously, if you're trying to use that animal. Um, Other factors associated with the behavior include timings of their estrus cycles, duration and volume of lactation, and things such as like developmental rates.
And what tends to come along with changes in um, behavioral changes is the traits you mentioned before, such as size and developmental rates.
Right, right. That's correct. When the behavior of an animal is changed, certain characteristics based on this change in behavior come along with it. Different nutritional regimens from domestication lead to a number of plastic epigenetic changes that distinguish them from animal wild counterparts. This can be actually shown through a famous example by Dmitry, I'm going to butcher this name, Dmitry Belyaev, a notorious zoologist, he conducted a case study in 1959, which he believed that certain traits were linked through domestication. So what he basically did, he took silver foxes and he tested a group of silver foxes, um, and they tested their reaction by putting his hand in their cage, and selected the ones that were had the calmest reaction to the hand. The foxes that were selected eventually, over 40 years, developed certain traits not found in typical silver fox populations, such as things as floppy ears, shortened snouts, and various others.
Yeah, and that also ties back into what you said earlier about how behavior is often the initial change in domestication,
Right.
as behavior leads to the other phenotypic changes. And
Mm-hmm.
that experiment really explains how domestication could have begun without intentional actions to change certain phenotypes of the foxes.
Right. Right. All right. Enough blabbering by us. I want to quiz your knowledge and test and see if you can identify so-called desirable and undesirable traits within domestic animals. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I hope this can kind of act sort of a teaching aid for listeners and at home who might need to hear like specific examples of these traits. All right, so I'm gonna give you two similar characteristics of a domesticated animal, and I want you to tell me which one you think is desirable and which one you think is undesirable.
Yeah.
All right, first one: family groupings versus large social groupings.
I'd have to say that I think larger social groups are more desirable,
Mm,
seeing as family groups tend to be more defensive and protective, um,
mm.
and unwilling to interact with humans.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And there's other factors that include like more genetic diversity amongst the large social
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
Excuse me.
No, no worries.
And they tend to coexist with other species more
Yeah,
easily.
yeah. You nailed it, man. You nailed it. Yeah, definitely larger social groups are definitely the more favorable trait. Like you said, they're more desirable, and family groupings tend to be more defensive and protective.
Yeah.
All right, next we have a generalist feeder versus specialized diet.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one's pretty clear. It's obviously going to be generalist feeder, just simply based on the fact that they'll kind of eat whatever.
Right.
Um, they're not as picky when it comes to eating.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
You nailed it. You
with a
sounds like you know
specialized
your stuff.
feeder, you
Yeah.
have to give them exactly what they want.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah, you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. Third one, a female accepting their young at birth versus accepting their young basis on basis of species characteristics.
Okay. Now that one's a little bit tougher.
Yeah. If you
I
need
think
help, I got you.
I I think I can answer for you.
All right.
I think that a mother who accepts their young quickly after birth is going to develop the more desirable traits for the offspring,
Hmm.
and it's going to raise them with more attention and care as opposed to a mother who um, simply accepts children based on, not children, offspring based on their characteristics,
Right.
um, seeing as they might not survive due to a lack of care or attention. Um, and are therefore unable to develop any traits because they're dead.
Mm. You put that perfectly.
Thank
I would definitely agree with that. Last one.
you. Yep.
An domesticate that would solicit attention versus it's independent and avoids attention.
Yeah, so I think an animal that actively seeks attention is going to be more receptive to human interaction,
Mhm.
as opposed to an animal that's independent and
Right.
wants
Yeah. Yeah. If an animal, attracts attention, it's going to be a lot easier to use for stuff like labor or,
to of
for food. But if it's kind of cowardly, it's not gonna want to do that.
course.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. You did great.
Thank you.
Next, I want to kind of focus on how animals become domesticated. We talked about, certain traits of animals, but now I want to see like how that actually, comes into play. And there's three agreed upon methods towards this. The first I'll talk about it's the commensal pathway. This pathway occurs when animals are drawn to an anthropogenic environment or to potentially feed on refuse around human habitats, especially the animal. Essentially, the animal is attracted to human life, and the human establishes a relationship with the animal. This relationship tends to develop closer. It's like a closer social bond with the animal that eventually kind of turns into like an economic bond that can kind of benefit the human.
Yeah.
Um, and the human receives eventually will receive tangible benefits from this relationship. Max, you want to talk about the second pathway?
Or another pathway is the prey pathway, where excuse me,
Yeah, no
rather
worries.
than initiating the relationship, the animals are the prey of humans. So the domestication of these species was sparked from pressure to preserve the wild population of the animal. And
Mhm.
so humans developed hunting strategies to preserve the animals. These hunting strategies kind of turned into herding strategies and eventually controlling many aspects of these animals' lives.
Mm.
So we saw
Yeah.
this with like wild bovine, wild
Mm.
cows. Uh,
Yes.
Originally they would be hunted strictly for their meat, but soon humans learned that they could control these animals,
Right.
bring them to bring them into their homes,
Mm.
breed them for many generations,
Right.
maximize your meat,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
just really benefit off their byproducts.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Essentially modifying the environment that both the humans and
Exactly.
animals live in. Yeah. And lastly, we have the directed pathway, which is a more intense and deliberate process. The directed pathway originates from humans having a specific goal of domesticating a wild animal. This pathway requires more effort on the human side, as typically the animal doesn't possess key behavioral characteristics that others might. Um, and it's kind of, increased technological advancements are kind of required to do this because, you're looking for a single thing that might be kind of harder to do, on your own or without advancements in technology.
Yeah.
All right, now I want to now that we covered the three pathways, I want to quiz you again, Mr. Sayler. I'm going to give you an animal, and I want you to tell me if you think it's typically domesticated through commensal, prey, or directed pathway.
Okay.
Now, I will mention that some of the it doesn't really they're not always done this way. This is kind of just like the most typical that this
Yeah. Of
animal see
course.
because domestication has occurred uh, widely across the
Yeah.
globe. So
I got it.
yeah, all right. First animal,
Yep.
horse.
Horse.
Mhm.
I'm gonna guess that horse is directed.
That would be correct. The intention with horses was to travel with them,
Of
and the
course.
size of the horse makes it harder to manage their behavior. So you need kind of advanced technology to do that.
Yep.
All right, next animal, dog.
Dog would be commensal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, you nailed it. Um, Dogs were domesticated through a commensal pathway. They originated from wolves feasting on human refuse. And fun fact, they were the first species to be domesticated roughly 15,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Last animal here. We got the sheep.
Yeah. Sheep. Sheep is prey,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep. Sheep would be prey. Humans face pressure to preserve the sheep population around their sedentary habitats. So they began to manage, then herd the populations. You often hear like a sheep herder, a shepherd. They're kind of herding the
Exactly.
sheep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Maxwell, I don't want to take too much of your time. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy schedule to come and sit down with me and talk.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for letting me come on here and kind
Yeah.
of, spread the word.
Yeah. Of course. I do want to mention that the topics of domestication of animals is very detailed and extensive. We only scratched the surface today. Our goal is to educate people who may be unfamiliar with the topic and hope that the listener can take away some new information from what we discussed. All righty. All set? You got anything else, Max?
I think that's it, buddy.
All righty. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for listening, guys at home. Appreciate it.